If anybody asked me what was down here to see, the first thing I would say was, you got to go see the trembling earth, because that's what we call Okefenokee, the trembling earth. Because things just don't stay still out there. They kind of move around.
Before, this was all Muskogee Creek land. It's not just a piece of land. It actually lives too.
Essentially, Okefenokee Swamp is a very shallow lake full of interesting birds, interesting plants, lots of amphibians, reptiles, lots of alligators. It kind of looks like the Serengeti, except it's wet.
We have people that want to do the overnight canoe trips. Some want to come on the new moon when they can see all the stars, and some want to come for the full moon to see it, because it is beautiful coming up over that prairie. Beautiful, big orange ball.
I'm a 7th generation Barber. My last name is Barber. My family has been in this region for a very long time now. This is one of the last fully, almost 100% preserved wetlands in the U.S. The Amazon, it's basically the lung for the world. That's one reason why deforestation is such an issue in the Amazon. You can think of this as the Okefenokee as the lung of southeast Georgia. What we're at right now, this is called a battery. The majority of this is peat moss. There are sections of this that get so thick, you can actually get out and walk on it. I'm not walking on this right now.
One of the changes that we have seen in the last couple of decades is the frequency of wildfire. The droughts are becoming more frequent, and when the rainfall does come, it's becoming heavier. So what that does is, instead of having large wildfires maybe every decade or 2 decades, now it looks like we're having large wildfires maybe every 5 to 7 years. And so that seems to be one of the consequences of climate change.
With climate change, it's predicted that there will be less rainfall over the Okefenokee. The water in the Okefenokee is, over 80% of it is strictly from rainfall. The peat, being waterlogged, holds so much carbon, and during drought conditions, when the peat is exposed to sunlight and dries out, it can become fuel for fires. These fires are natural. The Okefenokee is fire adapted, but it's peat dependent. We want to keep that peat. So if you have the combination of the peatlands intact and the forest around it, it's really a resilient system that will help us fight climate change. Well, the Okefenokee, it is the swamp, but it also includes Trail Ridge. Trail Ridge is part of the National Wildlife Refuge itself. It's all connected. So if you care about the Okefenokee, you have to care about what's going on Trail Ridge. If you want to protect what's on the inside, you need to protect what's on the outside.
Trail Ridge is an old barrier island. It's over 100 million years old, and it was formed when sea levels were higher. And it basically runs from up near Waycross, Georgia, down into Florida. It became interesting to miners because it's got a high density of titanium sands, which are useful for a number of things. Been heavily mined down in Florida, and the landscape does not look natural. It's not growing trees well. There's poor vegetation regrowth, and there's no wetlands that have been put there. It'll really take hundreds of thousands of years for the soil to redevelop to a more natural condition. When they mix up all those sands and put them back, the leakage rate through Trail Ridge will get faster, and the water level in the swamp will drop. So you have all these animals and plants that are adapted to life in a wet swamp. If you drop the water to the level of the swamp, you're basically going to reduce habitat for all of the species.
The Everglades was initially drained by the Army Corps of Engineers to provide agricultural lands as well as development within South Florida. They have come to realize over time that that was a terrible idea.
The Everglades are a highly modified system at this point. They've had really high inputs of nutrients from farming. They've had a lot of modification of the flows. They've had reservoirs built in the headwaters. There's now an entire federal program to restore the Everglades. It'll take decades to do so. The beauty of the Okefenokee is it's a largely unmolested, unmodified system. We can avoid the problems in the Okefenokee by not letting them start.
We have an incredible opportunity to not make mistakes today, to do the right thing today, to ensure that the Okefenokee is not damaged irreparably or in a way that costs a huge amount of money to repair the ecosystem, which is what the Everglades National Park has had to do.
You can say, oh, well, we're going to fix things back. You can't put back something that's been years in the makings. The impact from one little action is a ripple effect that you may not be able to salvage. There's stuff in the swamp now that they're still finding that they didn't know was there.
We think about alligators as predators, but they are also very important prey. When alligator babies first hatch out, they're quite small, and turtles, other alligators, birds, mammals, all kinds of things will eat them. Yep, take him straight back. Peter, can you go back, please?
Put that on, please.
All right. Snake. We covered their eyes to reduce stress. We learn boat acrobatics as part of alligator biology. The animal is 7.8 feet long. Mark right now is determining the sex of this animal. And what do we have here, Mark?
We have a female.
We have a female. So she is missing her front right foot, and this was likely bitten off by a turtle when she was younger. We're taking tissue samples from every alligator that we catch so that we can study genetics. And we're interested in essentially building a family tree of the alligators. Alligators are really social, and they have dominance and territoriality. It tells a whole lot about behavior, too, to see who's actually getting to reproduce and have their genes passed on. Tissue samples can also tell you things about their health and their diet. We've done some other work on stable isotope analysis, which is, in short, is the you are what you eat. We've been able to see that there's everything from bears to snakes to moths that these animals are eating out here in the swamp. Nuisance, it's a common term that we all use to describe an animal that has essentially acclimated to people. And the irony is that we call the alligator a nuisance when in these situations, the alligator's behavior that is concerning is simply a product of our own. And alligators have incredible learned behavior. In a lot of captive settings, they actually train them similar to how you would train a dog, in some instances even using clickers. But just like a dog at the dinner table, you only have to feed your dog once before he knows the dinner table, he knows you, he knows the time, he knows particular food items, and it's the same thing with alligators. It disrupts their natural fear, or even where it's not fear, just their tendency to mind their own business. And that's causing an interaction between people and alligators that is not desirable, and in some situations can be dangerous. I think they're really incredibly awesome, and I hope they stick around for a long time because they've been around so long and they never were in trouble until we started developing habitats and feeding them and sometimes having some negative interactions with them. And that's part of what we're studying as well, how to avoid unnecessary removal of these really important animals. I think this is an important thing about conservation. Our job is never going to be done. Look at all this water. This is an important resource for the entire watershed. This isn't just Okefenokee Swamp. This extends to the coast. This is the southeastern U.S.
All right, we're good to go. We're on. Back load. Put the everybody ready. Tail. Right. Set it on the edge right here. Okay, and then toss the back out. I've got the rope, so we're good to go whenever. Next 1, 2, 3. And away she goes.
Thank you, Batgirl.
It's almost religious. I'm gonna cry. You can feel God everywhere. You can just feel him. And I think that's what I like about it.
Even in your wildest dream, or the wildest dream of anybody that's ever been born on this earth, would have not have been able to come up with the game plan for Okefenokee, just like they wouldn't have been able to do it for the Grand Canyon, or the Everglades, or the Redwoods of California, or any other place. Because it's not that kind of thing. It's not a man thing. It's a goodness thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's a God thing. Plain, simple, in